Welcome to a special mock draft version Hard Knocks League podcast.
All right, sounds good.
For anyone new to the game, Hard Knocks is an online simulation football league where you're the GM, you draft college players, manage salaries, make trades, but with a serious dose of realism.
Yeah, it's got that real in-depth feel to it, you know?
Yeah.
It's not just about picking players, it's about managing an entire franchise.
Exactly. So we're diving into the Hard Knocks mock draft for season 2, and we're going to be using those media scouting reports and all that fun team information to really break it down. And this thing, it updates every 4 weeks or every 2 weeks after the championship game, so it's constantly changing.
Yeah, it really is a dynamic model, and it gives us a glimpse into those potential picks and, you know, how the teams might be strategizing.
Jacksonville Wildcats, they're on the clock, and they're projected to take center Brandon Johnson from Louisiana State.
The center. It's almost unheard of, and there's no clear consensus on Johnson. Some scouts see him as a generational talent. Others think he's overrated.
It's like the Wildcats are going against the grain, taking a gamble on a player who's dividing the experts. That's bold, almost as bold as the Seattle Kings snagging quarterback Corey Donahue from North Alabama with the 4th pick.
Donahue is a classic boomer bust prospect. Huge arm, tons of potential, but raw. The Kings need a quarterback. But is he the answer?
I guess that's what makes the draft so exciting, right? So many unknowns. Speaking of unknowns, the Atlanta Hawks are projected to take tight end Nick Marshall from Missouri.
Marshall is a beast, amazing athleticism, great hands, but the Hawks already have a Pro Bowl tight end. Is this a luxury pick, or are they planning a trade? So many possibilities.
Okay, we need to dive deeper into these other picks, but first, let's look at how these picks, especially these early ones, might actually play out on the field. Because taking a center first overall, that sends ripples throughout the entire draft, right?
Absolutely. It's like a chess move. The Wildcats are making a statement, prioritizing a strong foundation. Now other teams have to react. Do they follow suit, grab an offensive lineman while they can, or do they stick to their original plans?
And that's what makes this mock draft so compelling. It's not just about predicting who goes where. It's about understanding the strategy behind each pick and the potential chain reactions.
Exactly. For instance, let's go back to Corey Donahue, the quarterback projected to go to Seattle at 4. The media scouting reports are all over the place on him. Some say he's the next big thing. Others say he's a projectee.
Yeah, I saw one report that compared him to a young Brett Favre gunslinger mentality, but prone to risky throws. If I'm the Kings, I'm looking at Donahue's stats and thinking, high risk, high reward. Is that the kind of gamble you want to take when you're trying to rebuild a franchise?
It's a tough call. On one hand, you need a quarterback to lead the charge. On the other hand, reaching for a risky prospect can set you back years. Maybe the Kings would be better off trading down, stockpiling picks, and going for a safer option later in the draft.
Interesting. So we've got the Wildcats potentially overpaying for stability with Johnson, and the Kings maybe reaching for a boom or bust quarterback. What about the Hawks? They seem to be going for pure talent with Nick Marshall, even though they already have a solid tight end. But wouldn't it make more sense to address their weaknesses on defense? I mean, their secondary was pretty porous last season.
You're right. They could definitely use some help in the secondary. This is where those what-if scenarios come into play. What if the Hawks trade down, pick up an extra second-rounder, and use that to grab a shutdown cornerback?
That would be a savvy move.
Yeah.
See, this is why I love the draft. It's like a puzzle, and every pick creates a new set of possibilities and challenges.
And the beauty of it is no one really knows what's going to happen. These mock drafts are educated guesses, but there are always surprises. Players rise and fall, trades shake things up, and sometimes teams just go with their gut instincts.
Absolutely.
It's always interesting to see how a team's needs clash with the best player available philosophy. And in this draft, there's a lot of talent at the skill positions. You know,
For sure.
take DJ Brown, the wide receiver from the Maryland Turtles, projected to go 12th overall to Cincinnati.
The Blue Cats are in full rebuild mode right now. They got a lot of holes to fill, and they got a ton of salary cap space.
Exactly. They're in a prime position to take a chance on a high upside player like Brown. You know, he's got blazing speed runs routes like a seasoned pro, and those hands, they're like magnets. He could be a real game changer for them, the kind of player who brings fans to their feet.
Okay, so we got a potential franchise QB in Donahue, a dynamic wide receiver in Brown. Anyone else catching your eye in this top half of the mock draft?
Well, Nick Marshall, the tight end from the Missouri Lions, he's projected to go 14th overall to Atlanta. Now, this one's interesting because Atlanta's tight end situation isn't exactly dire. They've got some decent players already.
So are the Hawks reaching for a position that they don't really need?
It's possible. Or they might be seeing something special in Marshall, something that goes beyond just filling a current need. Let's not forget about Tampa Bay. They have the most salary cap space in the league. How do you think that factors into their approach?
I mean, they could be the most aggressive team in the draft, knowing that they have the financial flexibility to sign top talent. They might even try to trade up to snag their number one target, you know, the crown jewel of this draft class.
Precisely. Having that much cap space gives you a lot of leverage. Now, are there any picks in this mock draft that, kind of raise an eyebrow for you, picks that make you wonder what the scouts are thinking?
Well, the one that jumps out to me is Kevin Grady, the quarterback from the Winston-Salem Inquisitors, projected to go 25th overall to Detroit. I mean, a quarterback from the Inquisitors going in the first round is a little bit like, finding a unicorn in your backyard.
Yeah.
It's definitely a head-scratcher. The Inquisitors haven't exactly been a breeding ground for, top-tier NFL talent. So for a quarterback to emerge from there and be considered a first-round pick, well, there's got to be something special about him.
I mean, everybody loves a good underdog story, right?
Of course. But in this case, it's more than just a feel-good narrative. The scouts must see some untapped potential, some raw talent that other teams are missing. Perhaps they believe that with the right coaching, Grady could blossom into a star.
So he's a bit of a gamble, but a potentially high-reward one.
Exactly. And let's not forget, Detroit is also in rebuild mode.
Yeah.
They might be willing to take a chance on a high-upside quarterback like Grady, especially if they believe they can develop him into, that franchise player that they've been searching for.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this mock draft analysis. We've talked about individual players, team needs, potential trades, potential steals, potential busts. As we wrap up this conversation, what are your final thoughts? What are you most looking forward to as we get closer to the actual draft?
Well, it's going to be fascinating to see how it all plays out. Mock drafts are fun to speculate about, but the actual draft is always full of surprises. I'm excited to see, which players end up going where, which teams make bold moves, and, which players emerge as stars.
That's the ultimate reality show.
It is, and we all have front row seats.
Well said. This has been a really fun dive into the Hard Knocks mock draft. It's amazing to think that we're already looking ahead to season 2. Thanks for joining me for this deep dive. It's been a pleasure as always.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening. And remember to knock that subscribe button hard.